Would you please stand and join me in saying the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Tuesday, July 28th. And this is the meeting of the Morrison County Board of Commissioners. Gentlemen, we have an agenda, but I believe we may have an adjustment to the agenda. Mr. LeBlanc.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Just one item to remove from the agenda that went out last week. It went out as item number 5. It was the Council on Aging presenters not available to come in today. So request to remove that item from the agenda.
Wishes of the board.
Mr. Chair, we have July 21st on the agenda.
On your paper copy, yes, sir, you do. We'll note that we will note to make an adjustment. I believe the content of what you're looking at is correct. Yes. Other than the date. Gentlemen, can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I can second that. Thank you. Commissioner Moran makes a motion, and we have a second by Commissioner Casper to approve the agenda as corrected. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, gentlemen, we have an agenda. With that, we look to the consent agenda. Gentlemen, is there anything that anyone would like to have removed for further discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion by Commissioner Wincher, also a second by Commissioner Moran to approve the consent agenda as was provided to the commissioners. Discussion. Seeing no discussion, gentlemen, this is a roll call. Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
Commissioner Casper. Aye. Commissioner Moran.
Aye.
Commissioner Wincher.
Aye.
The chairman votes aye. All those voting in the affirmative, the consent agenda is passed. Gentlemen, next on the agenda, at number 5 on our agenda, Swift Energy.
Mr. Chair, I'll invite Mr. Shannon to come forward. And as he makes his way up here, Mr. Shannon's going to explain a project that is being discussed in the eastern portion of Morrison County. And I've invited him here today to provide an update to the county board. And I think that's what he's going to do for us.
Mr. LeBlanc, if I may ask, is there an ask for board action this morning by Mr. Shannon?
There ought not be at this time. Later in today's board packet, you're going to see 2 permit requests that Land Services will be presenting that is tied to this project for meteorological tower construction. I believe 2 of them to be permitted and request. But this is more similar to what we've done in the past with like the Northland Reliability Project and others that have had large projects that are occurring within the county, and to just provide some awareness on what might be underway.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. Mr. Shannon, I will ask if you pull your microphone towards you. Introduce yourself so that we have that on record here.
Absolutely. My name is Joey Shannon. I'm a Senior Director of Development with Swift Current Energy. I'm based in our Houston, Texas office. I've been in the energy space for going on 15 years now. I started my career as a systems engineer in the nuclear side of the energy industry. Transitioned to renewables just over 10 years ago. As a developer, we focus on front-end project identification, stakeholder engagement, real estate permitting, and ultimately getting the project ready for potential construction start.
Fantastic. I will let you proceed.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for making time on your busy agenda today to hear about our project, potential project. I've divided this presentation up into 2 sections. If you want to go to the slide 2 there, Matt. I have a brief overview of Swift Current, who we are, our history, how we came to be, how we think about the energy space as it relates to Minnesota. And then the second part is the potential project from Morrison County that we're focused on. Looking at Swift Current, if you want to jump ahead there. We were founded in 2016. Our co-founders came together with over 150 years of experience in different aspects of the power and renewable energy space. In our early days, we were a lean and mean team focused on project developments largely in the southern U.S., in Texas, in Mississippi, and in Arkansas. We've since expanded our efforts. In 2021, a group by the name of IFM Investors came into the mix to back Swift Current financially, and that's really where our growth trajectory took off. IFM is an infrastructure fund with offices in New York, Houston, and Australia. What they do is they invest pension fund money. So your teachers' unions, your fire, police, what have you, in order to keep those pension monies available and growing over time, they invest in infrastructure platforms like Swift Current. Our business model effectively is to go out and identify generation projects to bring to the grid. In Minnesota in particular, the grid is deregulated, meaning that if you own the transmission lines, you're not allowed to own the generators that supply electricity to the grid. We prefer to focus on the generation units themselves, particularly renewable energy, wind, solar, and battery storage. Think of our business model as basically the wholesale electric provider to the grid. And so you see here, we focus on those liquid power markets where there is a wholesale opportunity to sell electricity. If you flip ahead to the next slide there, we've got strong fundamentals for the Minnesota market. If you look at what's happening at large in this state, you have a 100% carbon-free energy target by 2040. You have a lot of coal-powered and thermal retirements planned in the near future, and you also have increasing demand from all kinds of load sources. General population growth, electric vehicles, digital aspects, new things coming to the system, all increasing energy and power demand at a rate we haven't seen in probably 30 years. And so what we're doing here in Minnesota is thoughtfully thinking through where can we add projects to the grid, particularly utility scale projects. So we focus on 100 megawatts and above typically, and I'll explain what that means in a wind context as well as solar. But when you think about rooftop solar or small scale, distributed energy, community solar, that is not in our core business. We focus on utility scale only. We've built strong partnerships up and down the industry based on everyone's collective experience, and we only work with tier one manufacturers of equipment. So on the wind side of things, you look at names like GE and Vestas, U.S. manufacturing based these days. So a lot of the wind supply chain has been onshored. Vestas with facilities out in Colorado, GE with facilities in New York and South Carolina and elsewhere. Those were our partners on the equipment supply side. Construction contractors, maybe some familiar names, the Blattners and Mortensons of the world. We have relationships there based here in Minnesota. And then some others we've done business in the past, like IEA, McCarthy, Moss. And when you think about the ultimate revenue stream from a project of a utility scale, your customer subset really becomes retail electric providers. So your Xcel, Minnesota Power, names you're generally probably familiar with. But we also target relationships with big box stores. So Target, Lowe's, Constellation, these other providers, they've moved into the wholesale markets to procure their own electricity. And so we manage relationships with a lot of those, we call them commercial and industrial customers, as well as your utility partners like the Minnesota Powers and Xcels of the world. And over time, with IFM's investment in the company back in 2021, I joined in early 23. We went from 2021 around 12 to 15 employees to over 100 now. So Swift Current has been on a really great growth trajectory. Our core competencies inside the company, we've got developers, front end folks like myself. We've got construction managers, execution managers, as well as operations and asset management staff. So some development groups out there, they're focused on, well, we're going to develop the project, but ultimately we're not going to be the long-term owner operator. We're going to sell the asset to another entity or another company. Swift Current is that full life cycle type of entity where we develop the project with the mindset of we're going to own and operate the facility long term. And so as we think about Morrison County, we really are viewing ourselves as a potential long-term corporate citizen, where our employees of the project would potentially live and be a part of this community for the next 30 to 50 years. Next slide. This is our current operating portfolio and construction footprint. I didn't list all of our development projects, but I did grab the two from Minnesota. In gold, we've got our operating projects, a wind farm called Castle Gap in Texas, as well as 3 other solar facilities, our largest of which is in Illinois. And so we have a contract with the city of Chicago to supply electricity to a lot of their municipal buildings from that 600 megawatts solar facility. In Minnesota in particular, I want to call out specifically the Iron Pine Solar Project. That is in Pine County, Minnesota, and it's probably 2 to 3 years ahead of where we would be on efforts here in Morrison County. And so that potentially 288 megawatt solar facility is there in Pine County. We've built up relationships with municipal staff in Pine County. I would offer up if you'd like to speak with any of those individuals, we'd be happy to make introductions just to hear about what working with Swift Current has been like. And then there in green is the Northwoods facility, and that is the name we've selected tenant for this project here in Morrison County. But I'll take a brief pause if there are any questions about Swift Current, our origins, our business model, before I jump into project specifics.
Gentlemen, questions? For Mr. Shannon? Sir, go ahead.
All right. This final slide here is kind of our customer relationship list. I've mentioned the city of Chicago, Target, the big box stores, some familiar names that you've seen across the board there, where we do wholesale offtake partnerships and contracting with them. If you want to jump 2 ahead there, Matt. The Northwoods Wind Project. In our prospecting efforts on the development side, we look for a few different things in order to site projects. First and foremost, you have to have a strong resource for electricity. In the renewables world, that means good sunlight or good wind speeds, wind resource is what we call it. The second piece to the puzzle would be transmission capacity. So you think about the transmission system, high voltage electricity, it can only receive and transmit so much electricity. It's just like running water. You can't jam more water into the pipe than it's willing to accept. So we look for transmission capacity and increases in that capacity. And then we also look for communities that are interested genuinely to support a project like this. It does take a village, as they say. And these are long dated projects to get through the development cycle. I'll explain that cycle, but it's a long process to get from initial project thesis, white paper, all the way through the development, siting, permitting, design, ready for construction efforts, through construction and into operations. This project in particular is a potentially 400 to 500 megawatt project. That's based on a few different things. First and foremost, back to that transmission capacity, how much electricity could be potentially injected into the system. In yellow there, and I've got a bigger map on the next slide if you want to jump 1 ahead there, Matt. Just to orient you briefly, the dotted pink outline is kind of the project area of interest that we started with, and that guided our initial outreach to potential landowners, to township leadership, to city leadership, and the like. In yellow there is the existing 230 kilovolt power line that runs through the area. In the northwest corner there, you've got Lastrip on down to Piers going south and into Buckman in the southwest. And then in the northeast, you've got Hillman, Bradbury, and down south. We've basically cut the project off at the Benton County line to where we believe Morrison County in this eastern portion is the area we've chosen to focus on. That yellow 230 kilovolt line, as you've all heard from our colleagues over at Minnesota Power and Great River, is the Northland Reliability Project upgrade. That, coupled with the wind resource we believe is out there, is in large part why we picked this area. That new transmission upgrade is going to increase the ability to get new megawatts onto the system. which means it's a potentially great place to site a project pending things like the wind resource, permitting, environmental concerns, and siting and design considerations. But that is general orientation. You go back one. When you look at kind of the project footprint and where we are today, we started efforts approximately 18 months ago, talking to local landowners, seeing if this was a good fit for the community, seeing if there was that interest. And then that interest appears to be there to where we've signed leases with over 100 different folks at this point, 100 different leases secured representing 25,000 acres in that area of interest in the dotted pink outline. What we're targeting or what we're striving to achieve is riding sidecar to the Northland Reliability Project efforts in order to be ready to construct whenever that transmission upgrade occurs. There's no way we can inject electricity into that existing line. It's already fully full of capacity. But waiting for the upgrade, we believe 2030 to 2031 is kind of the target date for that Northland project. We're riding alongside that to basically be ready to construct in the event that the project makes sense at that point. So we have a ready to build milestone date there of 2029 with the potential FNTP, which is a full notice to proceed. That's a financial term where when we go out to secure bank debt to build the facility, it's just like building a house. You go to the banks, you secure some bank debt to fund the construction efforts. The closing date is called the FNTP. A project of this scale would take approximately 18 to 24 months to construct, and that's highly dependent upon what kind of winters we get in between all of that effort. On the real property side, I have some colleagues from Black Point Land Resources out there on the ground. They live locally in Alexandria area. Me being based out of Houston, I'm up here as much as I possibly can. We've held 3 different community outreach events, 2 down in Ramey, 1 in Hillman. So I lead those and also engage with landowners and municipal leaders here and there to kind of bring forward information about the project. But they're out there on the ground as well. And we've done initial kind of permitting and environmental studies of a desktop nature, but you have to ground truth all of that. So things like the expected wind speeds, you have to ground truth that. Going back to the Met towers we'd like to install in the locality, as well as all of the environmental species and concerns of preparing for that ultimate PUC filing. So the Public Utilities Commission of Minnesota basically has a process for utility scale projects. Anything over 25 megawatts, it goes through their siting and review process, and you're ultimately issued a site permit. That entire process is approximately 12 to 18 months, filled with multiple potentials for public comment from the elected official comment and the like, where they do a top-down review of all of the data we pick up on the ground, where we have all of the environmental surveys and siting efforts that we're hoping to start next year. So if you jump 2 ahead, this is kind of a general overview or a Wind 101. How do we think about a utility scale project, bringing it to market from initial idea on paper to outreach to the community? In totality, it's approximately a 3 to 5 year process. Anybody telling you that they can bring a utility scale solar or wind project online in a year or 2 is not really credible, in my opinion. But you have to start somewhere, and that somewhere is with prospecting and land control efforts. As I mentioned, we're in about the 18-month window where we've been reaching out to those landowners. That effort will continue into next year to kind of fully connect the project. Ideally, have the right amount of acreage for that 500 megawatt target. But once all said and done on the site control side, we'll move into initial site due diligence and preparing permitting efforts for that PUC filing. And the whole rest of it comes together naturally after that. You do preliminary engineering to support that PUC filing. It's based on a number of different rules and regulations that they follow that we're very familiar with. Ultimately, you go into turbine procurement side of things and identifying full capital needed to construct the project, all of which wouldn't occur for another year or 2 from now. And then the financing efforts, talking to the banks, securing the loans in order to construct. You can kind of see the general flow and process to get us from where we are here in 2026 to a hopeful start of construction in 2030. Next one.
Sorry.
No problem. On the next slide, I've got just some general updates and nomenclature about wind turbines themselves. Where are we as an industry today? What has changed? What is new? Just to orient you on the names and that we use, the tip height of a turbine is basically from the ground level foundation base up to the top of the blade if it were straight up in the air. The hub is the central nose cone, if you will, where all the blades are attached together. And then you have the nameplate capacity. So if you talk about a 400 to 500 megawatt project, how many potential turbines is that? On an individual nameplate basis, they're 3 to 6 megawatts each. That is standard today for onshore wind. So you're talking about 80 to 100 potential turbines as part of this project, sited approximately 1,500 feet to half a mile apart from one another. They need space to breathe. You can't have one turbine aligned right behind another. So they need, additional spacing in order to have efficient production of electricity. Rotor diameters, standard around 400 to 450 feet. So that is the full swept area of the blades themselves. And the way the project is engineered and designed is to have minimal overhead lines. Predominantly, all of the turbines are routed underground, cables sited, 4 feet or below. Those cables are routed in a natural way to a collection substation. And so that collection substation is where all of the turbines are routed to. The voltage is then stepped up to grid level. So that new transmission line with the 345 kV Northland project, we stepped the voltage up there to 345. And we run a single gen tie over to the point of interconnection, which is that Northland line, north and south. And that's basically how it all ties together. The kinetic energy turbine spin, there's a generator up tower, you're generating electricity at a utility scale level, and you're transmitting it to the grid, and ultimately our wholesale customers procuring and paying the revenue side of that. Next slide. Some benefits of a project like this. So with Minnesota's target of 100% carbon-free electricity by 2040, they put out a pretty large incentive for counties and municipalities to host projects like this in the form of a production tax. So any renewable energy project in Minnesota owes the county and townships a production tax of $1.20 per megawatt hour generated annually. And so you think about that on a project like this, if you do back of the napkin math and what the electricity production is potentially going to be, a 400 megawatt project generates over $1.5 million in. That would be split 80% to the county and 20% to the individual townships that have infrastructure sited in. If you talk about a 500 megawatt project, if we reach our stretch goal, that's pushing 2 million plus in annual production taxes that are payable to the municipalities. Other kind of benefits, 250 plus full-time equivalent construction jobs. There's a pretty heavy emphasis at the PUC to use local craft labor on these types of projects. So we have some strong relationships there from our Iron Pine efforts in Pine County. And then long-term, you have 15 to 30 full-time employees. Those employees are required to live within 30 minutes of the site. So they would be very likely long-term Morrison County residents with Swift Current hats on at the end of the day. 401ks, benefits, health insurance, the like. And then you talk about other kind of direct impact or direct benefits, the landowners themselves. You talk about individual turbines and what is potentially impacted. During construction, you impact approximately 5 to 7 acres, and that's predominantly to get the new access road in, having an area around each turbine to lay the blades down and assemble the facility. When the project is remediated, we put back in topsoils, we reseed, we refurbish the facility, the existing ground. You're talking about an acre or less in most cases per turbine impacted, to where now we've got 1 acre impact on a turbine, to where the landowner, whether they're growing crops or running cattle, it's kind of a long-term diversification for them on a revenue side to help when droughts are in or when crops are not growing as well. We call it kind of a drought-resistant crop, if you will, with you working with a renewable energy project like this. During the development phase, so those are all kind of things that come into play once the project's operational. During the development phase, though, we are trying to establish ourselves and our relationships as that long-term corporate citizen. So we look for opportunities like the Morrison County Fair, which we were happy to participate in, the recent City of Piers playground renovation. A local landowner had a fishing, fundraiser that we participated in. We're trying to get the word out there about the project in a thoughtful manner and trying to identify what matters to this community and how to participate as best we can long-term as the project kind of comes to fruition. At a later date, what I like to do is, this is call it one of the first few discussions that I hope to have. What we typically would do as the project matures is kind of prepare a more formal direct impact kind of analysis, looking at that production tax as well as property tax uplift in all forms of potential impacts. Indirectly, during construction, local shops, hotels, having people on site during the 18 to 24-month construction period. And then, as I mentioned, the partnerships we're trying to build in the local community long-term. Last one here is kind of what to think about in the future and the commitments we make on all of our projects. As I mentioned, the PUC process, we're probably 2 years away from being able to file an application for the PUC. We need that wind speed data from Met Towers. We need to do on-site due diligence to prepare a package that has the PUC typical suite of things they like to see in it. That process, once it launches, there's an initial scoping session where there's public comment, a hearing, what have you, to basically scope the project, identify concerns that anybody within the realm has. That could be county commissioners, local residents, anybody from abroad. It's an open forum to basically identify any and all concerns that folks have about the project and the way we are hoping to install it. That scoping decision comes through. And then the PUC does a deep dive reviewing all aspects of the project, no stone left unturned, Q&A sessions back and forth with the developer to basically formulate the final decision that comes out from the administrative law judge. Another public hearing is held to review the contents and the mitigation strategies the PUC recommends to address any and all concerns that have been raised through that process. It's a pretty holistic way to get all aspects of the project identified, scoped, turn over all those stones, address the mitigation strategies that need to happen, and then thoughtfully cite the project, which we're very supportive of. Property taxes and infrastructure, as I mentioned, we'll do a deeper dive on what that means as far as county general fund and township uplift if the project goes forward. At a later date, you talk about installing a facility like this, there would be some impact or requirements on the county road system. What we would do at a later date is identify those heavy haul routes and the specific roads we would like to utilize and enter into what's called a road use agreement. There would be naturally some upgrades required to bring in equipment like this, all on our dime, as well as restoration obligations by the company and a bonding posted in the county's name to remediate and refurbish any and all impacts that come from us as part of building out the facility. A lot of folks have asked about what happens at the end of life on a project like this. So I wanted to include decommissioning safeguards and standards that the PUC has required pretty much every project in the recent memory. We have to provide the PUC with a comprehensive plan that talks about not only the installation of the facility, but how do you plan on decommissioning it? What are your thoughts and partnerships on the recycling side, as well as financial assurance that gets posted to the PUC. I believe it's Department of Commerce holds on to that, but I'll check. But it's refreshed every 5 years, and then you basically do a top-down estimate of construction in reverse, the costs that would be required to do that, as well as salvage values and recycling salvage values, updating that every 5 years. It's a commitment by the project and the company, both financially and in writing, to remediate and remove everything down to 4 feet below grade. That includes the turbine foundations, restoring topsoils to a quality that could be put back into use, whether that's agriculturally or otherwise, and the financial guarantee to back all of that should SWIP Current have financial stress or sell the project. Doesn't matter. That that financial assurance any buyer of a project would have to step into, or they lose their permit to the state. Just finally here to jump to more, at a broader level, the Northland Reliability Project, and you might have seen this one before from Minnesota Power Great River. It's part of a much wider upgrade across what's called MISO, which is the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator. They are the watchdog or regulatory body that ensures that the grid is maintained from a design aspect, and that the long-term growth in the market as far as customer demand is met by the transmission to support the system. As you can see, the gold star there is the Northwoods project siting. We generally keep an eye on these types of upgrades, as I mentioned earlier, strategically thinking about where a project could be sited to inject new electricity into the system. But in the MISO North region, which goes, all the way from Indiana, Illinois, up to North Dakota, this was the LRTP Tranche 1 upgrades that were approved, and it's pretty robust. You're talking billion-dollar infrastructure projects, and there's 12 or 13 of them planned across this footprint going forward. And with that, that covers everything that I wanted to, but also very much open to Q&A or anything else you'd like to discuss.
Ask the questions, Commissioner Casper?
Thank you, Chair. Just a question, Mr. Shannon. What does it look like? You must have some idea. You guys have invested a share in research. Just your desktop show. What is it? Are you pretty confident these met colors will improve what you need?
We believe so, yes. So we have desktop data that we've extrapolated from other public sources. So your airport systems, what have you. You can render in based on elevations what you think is possible at an area like this. And so you talk about even though it's very slight, when this eastern portion of Morrison County, there is a slight rise in the elevation to where that in the westerly flows of wind, you see an uptick. I believe that wind speed has been there for a very long time. I think in talking with locals that there was another effort probably 10 years ago to site a project there. My guess is that the transmission didn't support the project, and now the transmission is being upgraded. Morrison County, in my opinion, just looking at the desktop data, has one of the best wind resources in central Minnesota.
Go ahead, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I know you got one more. Go ahead.
Yes. Question to you, Mr. Shannon. I know there's a lot of exuberance from what I hear from constituents. Have you gotten a share of pushback? I'm curious where that lands.
It hasn't been pushback. It's been more just general concerns of those that don't want to participate in the project. And so I've kind of heard from two different camps of people. One, the exuberance, the enthusiasm, but wanting to participate, wanting to see the project go forward. And then there's those that say, it's just not for me. I don't really want anything to do with it. I'm not going to tell my neighbor what to do. But I just don't want to be a part of it. And we respect that. And so that kind of, whether they decide to participate or not, that kind of refreshing mindset is just that, refreshing, to where we're going to think about this in a thoughtful way from a setbacks perspective to ensure that those that don't want to be a part of it are not directly impacted in a detrimental way.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're welcome.
Commissioner Moran.
Chair. Over the last 6 months here, there's been many articles of the federal government pausing, putting roadblocks, funding, different things. Do you share on that? And has it affected you? And then does the federal government have the ultimate say? Could they come in a couple of years and say, no, this project isn't going to happen? Or is it up to the PUC to decide?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so the federal government does have say in a specific number of ways. When it comes to access to the grid, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, has an open access right. That has been a longstanding cornerstone for FERC, to where if a project wants to tie into the grid, which is a public resource, they have the right to do so. Ultimately, siting of the project does fall to the PUC, but the federal government has review and sign off in a few different things. First and foremost is the FAA and the Department of Defense. So the FAA manages and owns effectively all airspace above 200 feet above elevation. So you look at a turbine that's potentially, 500 to 700 feet tall at a tip height, we will need to engage with the FAA and the Department of Defense in order to secure what's called a determination of no hazard. Those are required for financing the project, as well as with the PUC. They like to see that we've secured those. The other aspect of it is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Army Corps. So those entities permit specific portions of the project. If you are crossing federal waterways or intend to, they have sign-offs in those regards as well. The general, comments about the federal government these days, though, and where they're at, they've removed tax credits for renewables via the One Big Beautiful Bill. We as a company believe that with or without the tax credits, projects like this make sense because of the uptick in demand in electricity that we're seeing in these days. So I think that aspect is kind of been set aside, and it's really just engaging with the FAA and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to get through that. What we've seen working with those entities is a general delay across the project. But when you talk about one like this, where we're 3 to 4 years out from construction start, we remain optimistic that we'll get through those discussions with those federal entities.
Commissioner Witcher?
If I may, Mr. Chair, this is my old stomping ground. I got many people out there in the area.
Sure.
That I know. I've had numerous calls to ask some questions. So one of the first questions they want to know is grant money, government money, dollars, whether it's your company or some contractor, do they get grant money to build these turbines? They just want to know, like, you're saying you're going to take loans out, it's going to be, have tax credits and all that sort of thing. They really want to know, how can you afford to build basically a multi-million-dollar project without getting grant money from the state or the federal? So is there money out there that some, not just you, maybe a subcontractor that helps you build to get this project going?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it ultimately feeds back to our financial sponsor. So I mentioned early on that IFM Investors owns Swift Current Energy effectively. They manage, I have to check the latest number, but somewhere in the $30 to $40 billion worth of pension fund money across multiple countries. And so that is the ultimate, they are the ultimate backstop to financially secure this project. We'll go out and finance it similar to a standard home, 80 to 70% of leverage from a bank, but the ultimate equity check is coming from IFM to support this project. They've been very public in saying that, they're real ready and willing to deploy capital through Swift Current to backstop projects like this. On your comments specifically about grants, the Department of Energy has specific grant programs out there, but they're very specific. Things like solar on coal mines, or former coal mines, or solar on, trash dumps, those types of programs that are out there. We don't believe there's any form of federal or otherwise grant that we would have access to on this project. So it's going to remain fairly vanilla, I would say, on a financing perspective, where IFM ultimately steps in and writes the equity check to backstop the construction, and we go secure a portion of it from the banks to build it.
Thank you for that. And then maybe I'll have a couple more comments. Another question was, if I'm out there in the area and I refuse to allow me to come through with you, and I don't want nothing to do with it, and you're coming down the straight path, and I say no, are you gonna deviate and go away from that, or does the government step in and say, hey, that's out? That was another, I had a few of those questions.
It's a great one as well. In Minnesota, in particular, from a real estate perspective, private companies like ours do not have condemnation rights. And so you have to be a regulated utility in some regard to have that right in a real estate sense. And so if we approach a landowner and they say, I don't want nothing to do with it, I have to go around. I have to cite the project in a thoughtful way and go around.
Thank you for that. And you just brought up the consumer too. And I've been out of state with some of these windmill you state that you're gonna decommission them, but I've seen them, and again, I've read, whether I believe everything on the internet, I think that's a funny thing, that when these blades, they're large, they're just, and I've seen them laying out with weeds growing on next to the turbines. So in this case, how are you gonna dispose of those?
Yeah, that's a good one as well. And it goes back to that decommissioning plan that we have to submit to the Public Utilities Commission. And so the wind industry in its early days certainly got a black eye with regard to blade storage and decommissioning and disposition of that equipment. What we've seen in the past 5 to 10 years, though, is that recycling programs have ramped up in a material way. So we have to strike deals and partnerships with those types of entities and submit it as part of our decommissioning plan to the state. We wouldn't have the right to dispose of them in any type of landfill or otherwise that isn't federally permitted or state permitted to accept anything like that. So keeping it out of the fields is our ultimate goal.
And again, the PUC, Public Utility Commission, can they ever change the board so that we have this, just like we are, there were 5 of us. In 10 years, we're probably not gonna be here, and maybe some of us will. So the rules and laws change under the Public Utilities Commission, like you brought up the decommission, and they're gonna state that you gotta do this. Do those change as board changes with them?
It doesn't change with the board. The PUC is mandated to follow state law, so state legislature would guide any material changes into the process.
I'm good. I yield back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Mr. Shannon, I wrote a couple of things down, and I'll try and.
Sure.
I'll try and be respectful of the time here too, but, so I'm just gonna kind of hammer away here. So Swift Energy, is a US owned company, is that correct? Or are you an internationally owned company?
We're owned by IFM Investors, but Swift Current Energy is 100% US with offices in Houston and Boston.
Okay. So, Swift Energy would be a company doing the same kind of work as, let's say, NextEra or,
A direct competitor of ours, yes.
yes, okay. And so that kind of help put that in perspective, here too. Yes, solar, wind, battery generation developers.
Exactly right.
That's your world.
Exactly.
So the project that you're looking at, 400 to 500 megawatt wind project in Morrison County. When I look at that, when you say that to me, that's a big project. This would be, I'm trying to put this in perspective to other wind that's been developed in the state already. You know, Buffalo Ridge has been there for eons, Southwest Minnesota, and there's been other wind projects, but typically what's been considered to be fairly large wind projects in, let's say in more in southern Minnesota, with more open plains there and that, but a large wind project down there in past would be 175 to 230 megawatts. 400 megawatt project in Minnesota is big, and North Dakota would be considered one of the biggest. So I'm impressed by the aggressive nature of looking at a resource like this in our county. Would this then be the largest wind resource in Minnesota? Would this be bigger than, let's say, Buffalo Ridge?
And so the Buffalo Ridge area is a multitude of different projects.
Yes.
But if you talk about a single project, this would be one of the largest ever in Minnesota.
Yeah, it's.
And one comment about the early days of Buffalo Ridge as well. So I cut my teeth down there probably 10 years ago. turbines in those days, 1.5 to 2 megawatts per turbine was big in those days. And now we're talking about 4 to 6 megawatts in 2026. I never thought we'd reach that level to where the scale is just, it kind of blows my mind occasionally as well.
So, and if I can continue, interconnection point, do we have an interconnection point identified? Or maybe I should back up, MISO status on this. Where is your relationship with MISO on this? They are open to this much wind, within the grid, within this region, obviously.
Yeah, that's a multi-year process. And so I didn't elaborate on where we are with them, but we filed the initial 150 megawatts with MISO in 2025. And we have filed the additional 350 here in 2026. That process with MISO is in tandem with the transmission owner. So we're working directly with Minnesota Power and Great River Energy to scope and estimate the cost. It's an electrical study that takes 2 to 3 years. They experience delays from time to time, but that will ultimately drive the decision-making on can the grid accept this much electricity and at what cost to us. And ultimately, it does become one of the largest fatal flaws in the project. If the cost to interconnect to the grid is exorbitant, the project doesn't make sense. We believe that initial early days point to it making sense, and we're proceeding through those discussions with MISO.
So, thank you for that. So, there will be or has to be a G&T receiver for this at that interconnection point. I'm sorry, you're saying, so has that, is that, and I may be asking things that can't be answered right now, or shouldn't be, but, it would be, if we're looking at, interconnection into Northland reliability for that 345 PAE line, that would be an arrangement then with either GRE or Minnesota Power or both in that sense, correct?
That's right. I think
Interrupt this, you should say the GMT for the audience, what does that stand for?
A generation and transmission entity, so,
a substation or switchyard.
Yeah.
so, XL, Minnesota Power, GRE, Otterdale would all be GMTs, up here, but,
Yeah, and so at the finality of the MISO study process, you're tendered what's called a generator interconnection agreement. That is a three-way agreement between the project and MISO and the transmission owner or owners in this case. And it gives you the rules of the road for interconnection and building that facility to tie into the grid.
okay. Yeah, so that's pretty much covers what I was looking at. I wanted to make one comment on decommissioning, because there always seems to be a lot of focus when we look at development like this, especially with wind, on decommissioning wind and decommissioning of solar. One thing that I always have to ask is, do we really see a great level of decommissioning of wind towers? Because from my experience and I'll just say the limited knowledge I have on this is that the towers never seem to go away. They just, they're like a race car. So once this unit wears down, an entity comes back in and rebuilds it. It's the original owners or others come back in and basically rebuild the turbines in the towers, and the towers never seem to be there. Your thoughts on that? Am I out of bounds, or?
No, you're not. You're very much observing the kind of progression of the industry, I think. So standard operating life for a wind turbine is 25 to 30 years. Most companies, including ours, structure their leases to have an initial 30-year operating period with the ability to extend an additional 20 to 30 years. What happens at end of life, or round one, if you will, turbine technology's probably come a very long way in that amount of time. You've got increases in efficiency, the like, to where you can use the same tower foundation and location, put the latest and greatest equipment in and do what's called a repowering to extend the useful life of the infrastructure you've put in place. Our lease, though, at the end of 50 years terminates, and the decommissioning conditions within the lease, as well as the obligations of the PUC, ultimately kick in where we have to bring that facility down. Considering that in Minnesota, wind energy really didn't take off until early 2000s thereabout, I would suspect that a lot of the early stage projects you've driven past or seen are towards the tail end of their initial operating life, or might have repowered, and that's why you haven't seen them come down.
So, maybe one final question. So, looking at this project and looking forward, would it be, Swift Energy's desire to be and continue to be the owner of this wind project? And they would enter into, an agreement with one of the GMTs as a purchaser of that product, correct?
That is the playbook today. We develop every project with that mindset of being the long-term owner operator.
Gentlemen, any Commissioner Casper?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Shannon, question to you. You had mentioned that 80 to 100 towers at 4-6 management. What is, and you mentioned that this spacing, what is the spacing? What's the closest they can be together?
It depends on topography, but it's generally flat out there, right? So typically with a swept area of the 4 to 6 megawatt turbine sizing, they've got to be at least 1,500 to 2,500 feet apart from one another. And that'll all come together at the culmination of the wind process, the wind studies with the Met towers. Ultimately, what real estate do we have to work with? But that's a general rule of thumb.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Moran?
Mr. Chair. A few years back, the Veterans Office in St. Cloud had a wind turbine. I don't know if you've heard of it. Multiple problems. It was never severe. It didn't get rebuilt. It got tore down. And now recently, the city of Wilmer had 2 wind turbines taken down at a cost of $1 million. That also decommissioned early. They weren't replaced. They weren't rebuilt. How do you convince the people that technology has changed? And then recently there was a storm that went through maybe Illinois or something that destroyed a bunch of these turbines also. That's going to be another cost. How do you convince people that this is a good way to go?
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as the operating life and making sure that the project operates as intended, I go back to one of my earlier slides about picking partners. We, Swift Current, only work with tier 1 manufacturers and installers of the equipment. We would not be able to secure the bank loans that we need to construct the project if we didn't have those types of relationships in place. During the financing process, you think of a bank as just a money lender. They actually bring in an army of independent engineers to suss out if we design
Thank you. You're welcome. Stillman, anything else for Mr. Hannah? Quick question.
Commissioner
Thank you, Mr.
Casper.
What kind of wind can these towers that you propose to put up, what kind of wind can they stand up against and still produce energy before they shut down?
That's a good one. So there is a cut in speed where the wind has to be a certain level for them to start turning, and there's a cut out speed. And so the cutout speed is intended to protect the equipment in the event of high winds or storms coming through. Many people don't realize that those fiberglass blades actually do give a little bit, and that's by design. You don't want them to give so much that they spin and flip their own tower, and you have a problem. So the blades can tilt to capture more wind, or they can open to basically allow the wind to pass through, and we can stop every individual turbine within 30 seconds with a braking system. The cut out speed, to answer your question directly, is around 60 to 65 miles an hour, depending on the turbine you select.
Okay. Another question, Mr. Chairman, you may. What kind of wind can they withstand before they topple? The legal South Dakota second great loss we just and from state line winds.
And that'll come together during the design phase, but it's straight line winds in the 120 to 150 mile range. That's where you start to see problems.
I see.
So they had a pretty rough go out there.
Pretty robust wind.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had a derecho in Houston probably 2 years ago, and it was toppling transmission towers. It was pretty impressive from just a general engineering perspective.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, sir. You're welcome.
Gentlemen, and Mr. Shannon, we're grateful for you being here and sharing with us and helping to educate us on what looks like a potential project or operation that would involve Morrison County and residents of Morrison County here too. I will share with you, and I'm sure you probably already know that, that relationship between Minnesota Power and GRE on the construction of the Northern Reliability Project have brought their representatives to this board for consistent updates and education. I would only assume this would be or could be the first of many opportunities for us to have dialogue with you and with Swift Energy. So we look forward to continuing to see where this project goes and where this takes us, and how, most importantly, how does this impact the 33,000+ residents of Morrison County out there and Minnesota as a whole. But we're grateful of your time and patience with us, and I'll say we'll look forward to further communication.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for your time on the agenda today, and absolutely, please consider this the first of many discussions to come. As the project evolves, I want to be as transparent and forthcoming as we possibly can. It's in the DNA of Swift Current Energy. I'm also happy to answer direct questions. Matt has my contact information. Please reach out anytime if you have questions or you hear a rumor about the project. Nothing is moving on this one without me knowing about it. So please reach out anytime for direct questions. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Wish you a very good day.
God bless you.
Gentlemen, we'll move forward with a land services report. Gentlemen, we have Sharon here this morning with us. Good morning, Sharon. Hi. Good morning. So I'll let you proceed with what you have for us.
Okay, so our first one is to consider the income use permit for Troy Texas State Energy to construct a new law to keep power according to the submitted plans, including one for these. With recommendation from the finance minister, finance.
Make a motion to Mr. Chair.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Lemire and a second by Commissioner Winchester to approve, with the, one condition that, is that what we have in, here?
Terminate 4 years to the date of the issuance.
Okay. Questions? Discussion? 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 Seeing no discussion, gentlemen, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion prevails. Sharon?
Second one is to consider the income use permit for 3 months with energy or an income use permit to construct the community block of the power according to the submitted plans. For recommendation from the finance minister, including one piece.
I'll make a motion with the condition.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Winchester and a second by Commissioner Casper to approve this permit, interim use permit. Discussion. 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 Seeing no discussion, gentlemen, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion prevails. Term is passed.
The last one is to consider the conditional use permit for Allendale Dairy to establish a tier 3 on VDOT, including conditions for recommendation from the finance minister on July 21st.
We have a motion by Commissioner Casper, a second by Commissioner Moran to approve the CUP. I'm assuming, Commissioner Casper, that is with the 2 conditions that are listed, a 50-foot wide grass buffer around the barn and that contact with Buckman Township for a driveway entrance.
Yes, that's good.
Discussion.
Mr. Chair, I
Sharon?
just want to make a note that the township, Boston Township did stop into our office and stated that the stand was happy to stop with them, to discuss that.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for that, Sharon. Discussion. Discussion. Seeing no further discussion, gentlemen, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion prevails. Sharon, thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you as well. Gentlemen, next on our agenda, we have Health and Human Services report level presentation here too. So, good morning. Morning. So, you want it? Morning,
Good morning.
Start off with some introductions for the record. Nathan Litchfield, Morris County Health and Human Services Director.
Melanie Erickson, Child and Family Services Supervisor.
And we're here this morning just to give you an update on some of our case management numbers and services with children's disability services as well as children's mental health. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ben.
Thank you for having me today.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yes. So if we're going to go to the next slide here. Yes, this slide is just, I present it kind of to you guys every year. It shows the continuum of children's disability that we are aware of and monitor in the county, all the way from the early intervention, outpatient services, all the way to hospitalization and residential treatment. Really, our services focus at the case management line, going all the way to placement, but our collaboratives also influence and have direct funding and cooperation on those early intervention outpatient services with Northern Pines and some other providers. Next slide. I guess yep. All right. Let's see. Yeah, that's a little bit different than mine. Okay. Well, this is just a graph of Minnesota student survey information that I usually monitor every year. And particular this year, I was looking at those depression and anxiety symptoms because we've seen so much of that on our caseload. In fact, we have quite a few hospitalizations right now of youth, more than we typically have. And really what this indicates is that this is the number of youth reporting symptoms of depression and anxiety. And, you know, they use the wording so that kids understand, you know, what those symptoms are, a little interest, little pleasure of doing things. You add up those percentages of youth that are reporting several days, more than half the days, or nearly every day within, and this is kind of within the last 2 weeks they have them report. That's nearly 50% of youth experiencing some depression symptoms of having little or no interest, about 35% feeling depressed or down, and over half feeling anxious, nervous, or on edge. And then around 40% have a difficulty stopping worrying. So as you know, that is quite a difference from 10 years ago when we talk about these symptoms. So that is something that we pay attention to for both our caseload and also early intervention and community work.
Mr. Chair.
So,
Mel, I apologize. I'm gonna pull up a separate slide deck so we don't have more of those problems. So give me a second here. Oh, this one was blank too. I don't know what happened.
That's okay. I'm just going to talk about some of the challenges we see in children's mental health. One of the difficulties we have is that we have a really lack of crisis services available to youth when they get into a crisis situation. We have the Northern Pines mobile crisis outreach that can be called, or they go to the hospital. And really in between there isn't a lot. And so sometimes I think for families and caregivers and the youth themselves, they struggle when they get into those really crisis situations because they're not, it seems like such a big step, right, to call or go to the emergency room. So what we'd like to do in the next 5 years is really increase our capacity to provide crisis services that can come to them in the home or provide some of those contacts. And so that's something we'll be focusing on. We've also done a lot of focus on really educating parents and teens about social media and the increased isolation. That I think has a big factor on those depression and anxiety numbers that we saw. I mean, there's been quite a bit of data shared throughout the nation and even the world about the impact of social media and electronics on kids and their mental health and their developing brain. They're just not ready to be able to handle some of that stuff. Another issue that kids are facing and their families are that we really don't have a lot of options for family therapy that comes to the home. Parents are very busy. They work several jobs, there's school, there's activities, and then finding time to go to outpatient family therapy on top of that is just really difficult. We used to have a lot more family therapists that come to the home. We've invested in our current provider to provide collaborative intensive bridging services, but that's not nearly enough. And so, really wanting to bring some of those services to them because transportation, as we know, is also a barrier. We also, like I had mentioned, with the limited crisis services, I think we have parents that and kids that hold on to their symptoms or their worries for a long time until there becomes a crisis. And so as an agency and in our work with collaboratives, I'm really hitting hard on the early intervention. When something shows up, it's a problem, it's okay to talk about it and kind of normalizing that. Because the sooner we get help, the sooner you get into services, the better the outcome. And then, like I said, the suicide rates and depression rates are concerning. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for youth 10 to 19 years of age. And Region 5 has a higher rate of average for suicide ideation in Minnesota. And that I think is directly related to our ruralness. And that's what they found in some of the suicide research I've done is the more rural the county, the more difficulty with suicide ideation is factor.
think it's your next one.
Okay. This is the one I've already done, so just flip to the next one. Okay, children's mental health case management is a voluntary service. Parents do not have to, and kids do not have to work with us, but we try to make it very person-centered and welcoming. Focusing, like I said, on early intervention, accurate diagnosis means a lot in supporting the caregivers. We really focus hard as a unit on teaching the kids what their symptoms are, how to manage them, and what are good coping skills. Really focusing hard on transition to adulthood and becoming productive citizens in our county. And whatever that means for them as productive citizens, that might depend on the level of disability. But focusing like things on high school graduation and driver's training has been really great. Job skills, things like that. So we work really hard on that and providing some of those contacts so that can happen. We've been focusing a lot on the neuroscience. Children have a developing brain, and their experiences of trauma or other conditions like autism impact them, and how you should provide services to them. And so we've done a lot of work with neurological assessments lately, and that's really provided some good treatment plan options. I think it's also important to understand that our children's case management here in Morrison County is a little bit different than our other county partners in that we provide children's mental health case management, but also CADI, waiver, disability services. And so that might include kids that don't have a severe emotional disturbance, but might have other diagnoses and are very young. And we feel the parents can benefit from case management and support services. And then we also provide services all the way through to extended foster care if that's an option. So I always say that our case managers here in our unit kind of are a jack of all trades. They provide the service that the family needs. We don't shift them over to another case manager because they know that those relationships that they form long-term are very important, especially to those youth, and it helps in the healing process. So this is our children's mental, children's mental health case management and CADI case management caseload for us and Northern Pines. So for Morrison County residents, because Northern Pines does provide case management services for some of our Morrison County too, because we are just growing so much. So we are at a pretty high level yet, and I think that's okay. Because like I said, I really want to focus on early intervention and getting kids the right help early. Sometimes we are open and close, and that's great. Sometimes we have kids for a long time. Again, it's very person-centered. So we do have significant partnerships, and I think I focus more on this than I ever have before across our agency and how we work together to support each other. We have one unique worker in my unit that does both adult and children's mental health case management, and she can really provide some really unique services to transition those kids from the children's world to the adult world. It's been very successful. We also partner often with child protection case managers because sometimes we become aware of a child's disability through a child protection intervention, and then we're able to step in and provide services, ending that child protection case management, and also making sure that we don't end up back in child protection again for providing other services. We pair with our adoption workers and providing a support for kids that are pretty traumatized coming through the child protection system, and to have successful adoptions. We also work with our waiver team. And we have now the co-located social worker at the clinic and our law enforcement embedded social worker. And we work with those folks as well in order to help treatment planning carry to other parts of the community. So if one of our clients ends up in the ER or law enforcement might be called, we can provide that communication and service, or sometimes they identify clients to us. Our children's intake worker has been great because I've asked her to help parents in the early stages, especially when kids are really young and are diagnosed with a disability, to kind of help parents get through that system of getting eligible for Social Security so that they can have in-choice assessment and some of those things. So she's been great at, instead of just sending parents back out in the community and figure it out on your own, which can be quite overwhelming if you have a child with a significant diagnosis, she instead will check in with them and walk them through that process. So we've seen some really good outcomes with that. Like I said, our neurological assessments have been great. Our neuropsychological assessments have been great because we've identified kids that can better be served in developmental disabilities case management. And it's important we hit that window before they're 21. Otherwise, they can fall through a crack and not be served at all in our community. And then also with our educational development truancy, we've been doing a lot with early identification of mental health symptoms. So we're kind of spreading out throughout the agency to provide support for our residents. One of the big things I always track are placements that happen through disability services. And it's significant because I guess not only does it cost quite a bit of county taxpayer money, but more importantly, it increases, it's a lot of time for kids. And I've said for a long time, kids should not have to leave their home in order to get the treatment they deserve. And so we continue to work on that. I mean, there are times that we do have to place youth because things aren't safe, especially suicide ideation is one of those big ones, right? But we are trying to decrease those numbers over time and having success with that by providing some of those unique services in our community. So this is just a snapshot of our placements in a quarter and where they're at. The residential setting might be a group home or a residential treatment center. Patty waiver foster care are those long-term disabled youth that need a lot of support. And extended foster care, those are past 21. And psychiatric residential treatment facility has been, is a service that's paid completely by insurance, so that's no cost to counties. More importantly, they are providing fantastic service for youth that are in very difficult situations of suicide ideation or behavior because they are able to adjust medications and provide really good treatment. And so we've seen a lot of success with those placements. I guess they're not placements, they're locations. So it's just like if a child would go to a hospital. The second slide here shows those trends of what we've been trying to work on with our residential setting costs. Those are our county funds and the increase in our clients. So despite adding clients and the severity increase we've seen, we've been able to decrease placement. So the supports we've worked on and developing to keep kids in our community is that collaborative intensive bridging services, which you might recall we started with the ARPA funds and yet continue. And it's having very good results, about a 70-75% success rate with that and keeping kids in the home. Our neuropsychological assessments that we're doing to help us understand how kids are learning and the impact of trauma or autism on their brain. And neurofeedback, neurosequential assessments, which talks about trauma, and our waiver specialist services. We're really focusing on caregivers, and we're using waiver funds, family support grant dollars, and some county funds in order to accomplish all of that. So the resources that we're building, I mean, I've done a lot with partnerships, and I will continue working with the Children's Mental Health Initiative, that grant we just applied for, and we'll talk about later. Working within other groups in our community to share ideas. And then also with our Morrison County Interagency Coordinating Council has been a very important partner, as you'll see on the next slide, because we're offering early intervention in the school districts through those contracts and those collaborative dollars. So those are our federal collaborative dollars. So they're offering early intervention for truancy. They're doing school-based mental health therapy and skills. They served 337 youth last year. We are very fortunate in this county because most of our providers, I think all of our providers in the schools, are Birth to 5 certified for assessment, and that is a special certification that usually counties do not have access to, and we do here with Northern Pines. And they're addressing those issues of anxiety and depression, and per their report, those scores are going down as they provide service. So they also have served about 300 students through their prevention and education program. So early intervention for truancy, I've been managing truancy for several years here and have a staff that works hard along with a contracted provider to work on providing services. We're able to divert about 93% of those cases from case management by his first contacts, the early meetings that happen, and then offering a truancy diversion group. And then we have some carryover truancy case management. Now, we did some data analysis about a year ago, maybe a little bit more. Really, we found out the way the statute's written, and you go to court if they don't go to school, and you do an out-of-home placement. And we saw absolutely zero results from that. Zero. And so we changed our practice and are providing intensive case management now and intensive in-home services. And that's where you see those carryover case management. So Logan's carrying a greater caseload, but the outcomes are so much better because he's connecting with those youth, getting them connected with services, providing good caregiver support, and we're providing a lot of education about social isolation and cell phone usage, setting limits and all of that, and it's having good outcomes. Also, I think, as it's noted in the schools, as he continues to show up in these homes over and over again, you can see that as kids consider not going to school, it's like, well, do I really want to have a case manager hang around for a couple of years, or should I just go to school? So I think some of them are deciding they just might want to go. And then we're doing the same with early intervention on the educational neglect. That statute change that comes over to child welfare now instead of child protection, which was fantastic because most of those situations are about needing some help with parenting, setting bedtimes, setting routines, taking cell phones and putting them away, the social anxiety, getting to school, all of that needs coaching and assistance. And so he's been able to provide services for those youth. We worked with Northern Pines and our Family Services Collaborative, NICID, to do a contract to provide in-home services. And so we just had a short window in the spring to do that, but already the outcomes are pretty good. Like one client ended up in case management with Logan as a result of that, and we were able to divert all the rest and get them going to school. So our hope is that doing that work in grade school will mean that truancy number will drop even further. So that's been exciting to see that work come to such a positive outcome for families and kids. So again, my goals, increasing that early intervention, in-home family support, the supports for caregivers, limiting out-of-home placement, working on our crisis services, really looking for accurate assessments, and using our new Children's Mental Health Initiative to support some of those funds as well as we move forward.
Commissioner Winter.
No question, Mr. Conley. But unfortunately, there's a cost to the county taking child services. Fortunately, Melody, I hear nothing but praise for you in this county, and we're just privileged to have you here. The enthusiasm that you bring is just very important to the child development. So thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. I have to say, I have fabulous team. They are so committed and care about their families and kids so much. It is quite a privilege. So I would not have time to do half the stuff I do if I didn't have such competent people doing really great work. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Commissioner Casper, go ahead.
Mel, you mentioned that suicide is the number 2 loss of life that you become with.
Mm-hmm.
What is the number 1? Is it medical issues or?
I believe that's like car accidents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Swing.
You're welcome. Melanie, I looked at one of the earlier slides that showed the number of caseloads, you know, not only handled by your department there and stuff, and then the numbers right above that for million fines and whatever. And, you know, over a 6-year period, we aren't seeing a decrease in those numbers. And you did move the comment, you know, this is all right in the sense, and I understand what you meant by that, that we're reaching these people, we're effectively reaching these people, but when we look at this from, you know, I wrote a couple things down. I want to be careful with them, you know, being about, and we've talked about this before about, are we in a mode where we're just reactive to the situation that's being dealt to us? Or how do we become more proactive to eliminating the problem or the drivers of the problem? And so, and I know I'm kind of going around here a little bit around the edges, but you had mentioned too, early in your conversation about, you know, some of those drivers, the youth that are not mentally ready, competently ready to handle cell phone usage, social media, these kinds of things. Where I'm going with this is it realistic to see these, to envision these numbers ever decreasing, or that percentage ever decreasing without us taking some type of societal position on access to social media by the children? Because it's not, you know, it's not kids at 14 and 15 that have cell phones or access to computers or to social media. I mean, I see kids that are 7 years old that can run a phone faster than I can. And so I wonder, and I know, you know, there are countries that are around the globe taken actions to say there will be limitations on access for youth. Does that become part of the answer or the answer in your thought?
I think it does. I think it's education for parents and kids both. You know, as we understand more as a society, we change how we handle things. That's just always the way we've evolved. And one of the things I'm really excited about, as we've talked about here before, is our development of our community resource center, our family resource center here with Arrows. I really think they're going to be in a unique position to offer some of that training, support, and education to our community and our young families, and help them make choices and give them the support to do that without necessarily having to come all the way in our doors. So between that, and also with the work that Logan's doing with the early intervention for the educational neglect, and also our partners at Northern Pines on the school-based, I'm hoping that we can have some impact in those areas. And then, you know how it is, you kind of change the tide in a community, like as more people understand and know, they tell other people, and it becomes more of a social norm to say, no, you know, we're going to wait on a cell phone, or here's this other phone. I think it's called a BARC phone that doesn't have access to the internet. And so I think just giving parents some of the education options could possibly help.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything for mom and thank you for thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, before you leave off the topic, children's services and many children's mental health. So, first I will echo that Melanie and her team do exceptional work, and we got a great team trying to get ahead of the curve on a lot of things. More so than I see in other counties, I guess. And so, I'll state that, and then I'm going to pivot a little bit. So, 5 weeks ago, beginning of June somewhere, I was at planning, and we discussed the opportunity of applying that MDH, or the Department of Health, for the Children's Mental Health Initiative grant.
I would like to announce that last week we did receive word that we did receive that funding, or will receive that funding in the amount of $311,000. We have not seen the formal grant agreement, and, again, this is to continue our Region 5 Children's Mental Health Initiative, focusing on similar things that Emily has talked Mel talked about earlier today, just as far as crisis services, and just the lack of resources. And so that is good news. That will support our work in that area again for another year, and opportunities for that to be a 5-year agreement and add those funds in 7 years coming. And with that, I think I would ask the board, would you like me to bring that formal agreement before the board again at a separate time, or are you comfortable giving me approval to sign that when that agreement comes ready? And obviously that will be before that, which was you.
Gentlemen, thoughts?
You go ahead and see.
Mike?
It doesn't matter to me if that was, I think that I have a responsibility on file with that.
I mean, we authorize the team to explore the, receiving that grant. I'm fine with that too. You want to sign that? We will obviously see a copy of that come through, with that board packet. So if there's questions, commissioners have questions on that, we certainly can reach out to you. Fantastic.
Good job, Dave. Thank you.
Yeah, keep up the good work.
Take me on.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would. So we have other guests here this morning, correct?
And I will let them introduce themselves, but I will preface it that Sourcewell is our partners in our child care licensing area, and so they handle the child care licensing for Morrison County and the region. And with that, I will turn it over to them.
And good morning, ladies. Yes, if you pull the microphone down, and I asked each of you to state your name, so we got that on the tape this morning.
Alyssa Erga, Senior Regional License Specialist for Morrison County for Families Health. Good morning, everybody. Michelle Taujas, Director of Licensing Services for Family Child Care Licensing and Adult Foster Care Licensing. And thank you for having us today.
You're welcome.
Well educated this morning.
Mhm.
All right, so Sourcewell has partnered with Morrison County since July 1st of 2018. It's already been 8 years, which is crazy to say. And we also partner with Morrison County for adult foster care licensing, which we entered that partnership in July 1st of 2019. So 7 years with that service. But today we're going to be talking about family child care licensing. And so since then, we've expanded our services across other rural counties. We cover all of Region 5, Cass, Crow Wing, Morrison, Todd, and Wadena. And then also we partner with counties in Region 4, Becker, Douglas, and Stevens for family child care licensing. And then recently, in the past 2 years, we've entered into a partnership with Region 1 and 2, Monoman, Norman, and Hubbard counties. So currently we have 3 full-time regional licensing specialists. And so Morrison County has Alyssa Erdrich as the assigned regional licensing specialist, and she's actually been the regional licensing specialist since we've entered into this partnership in 2018. So you have not had any other regional licensing specialists for Morrison County. She has been your assigned throughout this whole partnership, which is exciting to say. So I don't think we can say that across any, Morrison, Todd, and Wadena counties, you've been the assigned regional licensing specialist. So currently with our structure, we have 2 other regional licensing specialists that have assigned caseloads. And so based on that, we really like to recruit and retain that specialist to be local. And so Alyssa is local to Morrison County and really see that value of having that local feel and local contact for our providers. And so also with that, that stays true to our other specialists on the team.
With our cost structure, we do subsidize the rate for our Region 5 partners. And so there is quite a bit of a subsidized rate for the cost of our licensing services for family child care and adult foster care licensing. And then also outside of Region 5, they do pay a higher cost for our services. And so with 2025 and 2026, we did not increase a cost for our services based on hearing from our county partners and the budget cuts and everything. We were able to do a no increase for these services. And then we are going to go to the next slide. So currently with our caseload, Alyssa, based on, we have looked and evaluated our caseload sizes across our licensing services. And so we like to stay at a max caseload of 160 license program per ROS. Alyssa is a little under that, which is good for recruiting. We do have, providers that enter the career and then also leave the profession. And so we want to make sure we stay at that 160 or less. But again, the role of the specialist is responsible for partnering with the counties that they're assigned with, ensuring that compliance, that they're applicable to all the federal requirements and rules and statutes. So making sure our licensed providers are maintaining compliance and we're regulating all those programs. And then also serving as an advocate for our licensed providers in our counties as well. And of course, our parents and guardians. And then also establishing and maintaining relationships with our key stakeholders and partners, with early education and our family child care providers. Go up to the Morrison County program slide deck. There we go. All right, Morrison County currently has 76 active child care licenses. Minnesota Department of Children and Families maintains this public list on their website. And then for 2025, we had 6 new providers and 10 closures. Currently, right at this time, we have 5 applicants that are in the process to get licensed in Morrison County. Along with the provider that is looking to move from another county that's close by, that's currently licensed there. And then we also have another provider that closed last year due to low enrollment. Now that she's heard some changes, she wants to get your license back. So we've got about 7 people that are looking at the profession. With understanding closures and trends, Sourcewell conducts a child care exit survey when providers leave the field to better understand trends and form system improvements. 2025 report reasons for closure we received, decided not to reopen after maternity leave, personal reasons, accepted a position at the school district, medical reasons, and a pretty common one was just that the universal pre-K had started and they're not getting enough children in that preschool age to fill up their spots. Insights for these responses have been used to develop targeted resources and supports and inform strategies to address child care access needs within the field. All right, so I'm going to talk about recruitment and retention. So for our recruitment efforts, we have a pretty robust onboarding process for our new family child care providers. So we have a self-paced orientation, which they can gain access as soon as a couple of hours of submitting a request, which previously, when it's done at the county, they just don't have that capacity or the bandwidth to have a online system and maintain it with all the legislative changes that happen with licensing. And so you are required to have it 6 times a year in person is what DCYF requires if you offer it. So again, this really helps with recruiting and getting them licensed much quicker and getting them through that process, and that they're getting the consistent information. Every applicant is getting the exact same information at that entry point of what it means to be a licensed family child care provider and what rules and statutes they have to comply with. Also, we have a mentorship for new providers. Again, this is just an optional thing that Sourcewell provides. It's not required by DCYF to provide this, but we do a 6-month check-in for all of our new providers. This way we can check in, see how things are going, see what kind of questions, technical assistance that we can provide. It's optional. Again, if we're out in the field, we always do say if we do see a health and safety concern, we are going to have to unfortunately cite them for that if you do see that, but we're there to educate them, to support them and to advocate and help them succeed as a family child provider because it's a lot of information at the start. So that is something that we do offer all of our new providers. And then also we have a really unique and good collaboration with some key partners that were established. Our Wayfinder Navigators were established when the pandemic ARPA funds were available. They created what they call the Wayfinder Navigators. And this program really helps with recruit and retention. And so at Sourcewell, we built an internal process to refer our new providers and our existing providers a process to support them. If they need help with paperwork, children records, their environment, if they've had multiple violations, they're there to support them, to keep them in the field and come back into compliance and be there to build those relationships and support them. So we really see value with that. And then also we have an internal referral process with First Children's Finance that help build their business. Build their policies for their business and to thrive as a business owner. And then Empower to Educate to help with the professional development requirements. So the prereqs that they have to take prior to becoming licensed and then ongoing. They have a workforce advisor and there's a stipend if they're embedded to that program, they can be eligible for a stipend for that. Again, that's an internal process that we have with our robust onboarding process that we want to make sure they have those resources at the beginning of their journey as a licensed family child provider. Appreciation, we are in the midst of it right now. I just got the request or send over from Melanie with your Provider of the Year winner for 2026, which we'll announce at our upcoming conference in September. Which is always our favorite thing to do is to announce the Provider of the Year where the nominations are coming from parents and guardians. And so we'll be announcing that and then sharing that video with you in September. Once we make that announcement. And then resources. Again, this is huge. Licensing is always changing. Legislative updates, I'm sure you hear it, of all the changes and then the new proposed standards. So our way of keeping our providers informed, we have a weekly Friday email that is sent out to all of our county partners and our providers, and we're gathering all the information that is pertinent to our licensed providers and sharing that out to them. We have a website that we keep up to date that they use, and then some other major resources where there's been gaps in DCYF where we help fill those gaps for our providers as well. And then we have an annual survey. Again, the voice of the customer is important to us. We want to hear from your providers how we can support them. So we do have the county send out an annual survey to all of your licensed providers to get that feedback. And so just some personal quotes from Morrison County. We had 17 completed. And then this last year in 2025. And so experience working with Sourcewell as a licensed provider, it was a 4.6 out of 5. And then just some feedback, very helpful with every question I have, prompt help, easy website, personable representative. And then if I have a question about licensing, Alyssa's always prompt in answering those questions. So just some personal quotes that just share with all of you. Next, we'll go to legislative updates, which I'm sure you're eager to hear all about it.
The Child Care Regulation Modernization Project is a statewide effort launched in 2021 through legislative action and federal funding to update how child care is regulated in Minnesota. The goal is to modernize outdated licensing requirements and create a system that is more clear, consistent, and aligned with today's child care environment. The project focuses on 3 major areas: revised licensing standards, which would be updating rules to better reflect current practices and expectations. A risk-based tiered violation system or a weighted risk system is a new framework to prioritize violations based on level of risk to children rather than treating all violations the same. And then the last one is key indicator system or abbreviated inspections. And this one would be identifying programs that may qualify for shorter or more focused inspections based on compliance history. Where things stand now in 2026. Revised licensing standards were passed into law in May of 26. These new standards will not take effect until July 1st of 2027. Implementation planning is currently underway, including training for licensors, communication with providers, and system and process updates. Cannot be implemented before January 1st of 2027. What this means for licensors and providers, no immediate changes. Current rules still apply until July of 2027. Big change is coming, that there is time to learn the new standards, prepare providers, and adjust licensing standards. There will be ongoing communication and updates from DCY, including the newsletters and guidance as implementation develops. Provider newsletter to ensure clarity on new standards or concerns. The newsletter will be distributed monthly through July 1st of 2027 and will include implementation updates, answers to frequently asked questions, clarification of licensing requirements, and information about available resources. Providers seem positive about the change in the license capacity, allowing more children under school age with each license class and a decrease in annual training hours required. One change, for example, family child care outdoor equipment. One question received was the new rules require continuous railing around decks, elevated play structures. Does this mean there could be no open access to structure? The answer is no. The requirement for the continuous railing is intended to help prevent falls from elevated surfaces. Similar to requirements found in the state building code, railings may include gates, doors, and other access points to allow children and adults to safely enter and exit the area. For play structures, this includes openings that are necessary for intended use of the equipment, such as access to slides, climbing features, monkey bars, platforms, stairs, and other play components. And also we have the hub updates. At this time, we don't have an update. We have been chosen as the pilot counties for the hub, but no news on when we can expect this to launch. Any questions?
Commissioner Winter.
I believe, Lisa, you brought up this, so that I'll give kids that answer, if it's Michelle. You brought up, one of the big reasons of universal pre-K is causing a lot of them to get out of it. I'm assuming that these people are getting free tuition and low cost tuition. So it's basically, to me, it sounds like government is competing against the big kids. Again, if you could explain that, because that kind of bothers me. Again, daycare is expensive. We all know that. We all know the authorities, but yet you're speaking to that, due to low enrollment. Is that because of this universal daycare? If you kind of, somebody keeps following up in their daycare.
Yes, we are noticing, several providers had concerns, especially with a lot of the preschoolers are going to that program. It's cheaper. Different reasons to that extent, but the state also has answered to that by increasing the number of younger children that the provider can have in care now. That'll start July of next year. So they'll have an additional toddler spot. So we also have an issue with infant and toddler shortage of daycare because there's a limited number each provider can have of that age group. But now with increasing, adding one more to that ratio, they're allowing for us to hopefully have more care filled. So it's not.
And so if I'm a daycare provider, if I need this care,
You may.
can I only charge so much for some certain maybe low income or whatever, and that state tells me what I can charge? Is that the reason, or are they just going because I'm gonna take all low income or the free? I don't know if you can explain that, please.
Yeah. Okay, so as a business owner for a family child care, they set their own rates. They can charge as much as they want for infants, toddlers, preschoolers, and school agers. That's a luxury of being their own business owner. Again, there's a cap rate for if they accept child care assistance. That is a cap rate based on if their parents are aware rated, if they have some other eligibility, where they sometimes will get an increase for that child care reimbursement rate.
So you say cap rate, if I'm a daycare provider, I'm charging X amount of dollars, but I want to charge this, I cannot charge them any more than what the state paid.
So the county would only reimburse what that cap rate is, and then the parents would have to pay the remaining balance. Mhm.
But even then, that sounds like it's a contradiction thing.
Yeah, Universal Pre-K is a great program. Again, tuition is covered for those children to receive that preschool for free. Again, there is some hindrance for our family child care incentive-based programs for the fact that they are going to the Universal Pre-K that's under the that the school has that funding. More than it's jeopardizing our family child providers, because those are the money maker spots they booked. Make to have more preschoolers, they'll thrive better as a business owner. And so with that, there is some legislative movement with that, where they're calling it a mixed delivery, where our family child providers could then potentially receive that same universal pre-K funding if they choose, but they would have to meet some criteria that, federal.
So the government has.
Government, yes.
In more, tell you what to do, really, okay. All right.
Yeah,
Thank
so there is some potential changes coming down the pike that would benefit our providers for that universal pre-K within this delivery. What they're working on. Great question.
No? No, Commissioner Casper?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question, and maybe you covered and I missed it. Little Falls School District as childcare, do you license them as well?
No, so they are a center-based program, and that is licensed by the Department of Children, Youth and Families. They regulate all centers. We just license our family child care providers, which they can operate a business within their residence or outside their residence, which could be in a commercial space in a school, but they're called special applications, which they have a capacity of 14 or less
I see.
is the difference between the centers.
Oh, very well, thank you.
Mhm.
If you see a good question.
Yeah, good. Gentlemen, anything else? Alyssa, Michelle, it's always a pleasure to have you here, and helping, educate us without data. Your world that you work in is involving and dynamic one, and it's important for us to stay abreast of what's happening out there too, in that environment. So thank you for being together. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to present, and thank you for the partnership over the past 8 years. And we couldn't do the work without these two in the team. So thank you.
I think they probably say they couldn't do this without you guys here. So
Keep partnership there.
Stay cool.
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, see if we can hammer away here. I'm gonna look to, Mr. LeBlanc, our administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no updates for the board today.
Then we look to, take care of, our work with our deputy chief clerk here, Ms. Tabitha, and our schedule, correct?
Thank you.
And we are looking from August 2nd through August 15th, correct? Commissioner Mayor.
August 4th, planning session 8:30. PC Boa, 6 o'clock PM. 7th, public works planning session, 8:30. Before. 10th, Yellow Ribbon meeting, 3:30. 11th, Dean's board meeting, 9 o'clock. 12th, for the department meeting at 8:30. And I have a primary election chemistry board meeting at 11. And admin large conference room. And that's all I got.
Commissioner Moran.
Yeah, that's got me covered.
Commissioner Winchell.
Got me covered.
Bob?
I just got a couple, Mr. Chairman. August 11th, Tuesday, new community development of Pine Country Day. And you and I was gonna ask Nate on it. I can that's what I was reading, but I have marked down for Morrison Child Gardena County Health Board.
Community Health Board.
Yes,
Commissioner Casper, and I did not ask, Mr. Bertram, but I did get, an email, asking if we could, cancel our meeting
very well. I did have a question on it.
in August. I will circle back, with him, because I don't have anything of urgency to bring, so we could probably cancel it and move to November. I will reach out to you either phone or text, after I had that conversation. I appreciate it, and I'll do that before, try and do that before I leave today.
Okay, just one other one,
Yes,
Mr. Chair.
yes.
August 13th, Thursday, 1800, Camp Berkeley Veterans State Trail. Meeting at the Fishing Museum, 1800. That's it.
Um. I'll let the board know and our administrator and Ms. Tabitha know next week on Tuesday. Commissioner Casper will run our planning session, and I will be at I will be at an energy issue summit, and I'm taking a class, in the nuclear energy topic, on that Tuesday. So, I will leave Monday night. I will not be back till Thursday, probably late afternoon. I will rejoin you guys on Friday at Public Works. So Bobby, you'd be so kind as to facilitate next week in my absence. I appreciate that. Otherwise, I have nothing else for Tabitha. Gentlemen, is there anything else you would like to discuss? Commissioner Casper?
Well, I would just say thank you to Tab that she has given us the dates. We requested them well back, and that's really helpful. Thank you.
Commissioner Moran?
Tab, if August 25th, it says the public hearing before the board meeting. I got on my schedule. Do you want that to be done soon?
Find out for you, I think after.
Okay. Does anyone else have one on you?
I don't have that on my email.
Can't remember where it was involved. It wasn't spelled out. I'm gonna be where it was involved. He's right. It's on the theory.
Gentlemen, is there anything else to come before the board this morning? Thank you for everyone for your participation and your patience with us. Gentlemen, I'm going to adjourn us this morning at 10:58. Thank you.